Right. I'm going to give you an example of the dynamics of the hacker world operates in basically two ways. So, essentially, you have pedo, and then basically what would be counterculture, or mostly the hackers are like nerdy D&D guys, okay? So, nerdy D&D guys, usually they look like death metal Jesus most of the time. You know, they usually listen to death metal and stuff, and crappy Marilyn Manson kind of stuff. And that as they reform up from hacking all the time, they're supposed to make their way to super America, basically. And that's just kind of what it is in their world. And a lot of them are still stuck in the 90s. And then as they get older, they're supposed to kind of, because they don't really do anything bad. And one of the things about the dark web is it kind of requires people to adhere to certain looks, okay? So in the pedophile world, essentially what you get is church preppy in high school. People that are basically like Mormon seminary students, that then eventually they're supposed to look like scraggly long hair, and then secretly online those guys will be doing the pedophiles version of Satanism. See, this version of soft Satanism, I guess, is about fucking two witches. It really is. Or more. This one's about doing these prairie enchantments and shit like that. And so, essentially, what happens in high school is that a lot of times the smarter church kind of kids that are doing hacking, that is where, in ways, the police officers, they attempt to recruit these type of people. And then years later, they kind of, in the past, they would kind of turn into what is online a stereotypical satanic pedophile hacker. They'll usually have like a mullet. A lot of times they'll be going bald and stuff on top. Usually they have glasses a lot of the times. And that they'll be kind of too Jew obsessed. And that they usually orchestrate in ways the like blackmailing events. And that these people usually are, as they reform from pedophilia, this is like the looks that they have to like adhere to maintain their online pedo leadership. This is what it has kind of always been. These things have kind of changed. Nowadays you get these people replaced by the world's most satanic pedophiles. And that then, essentially what used to be Christians has kind of turned into like Mormon seminary students that then have like a leadership over pedophile Christian hackers. And so that's kind of where this dynamic is kind of changed. The reason this never happens is that If you spend 20 years being death metal Jesus, it's difficult to get death metal Jesus to be cleaning up, okay? And that's kind of what it is. But that these people, like I say, these people are the ones that, sure, they do like D&D, hippie, barter fair kind of stuff. And then, yeah, they see these people show up to that stuff. And they do a satanic ritual in front of everyone. These people usually they see it. Yeah, they see it. They don't participate in it. They fuck two chicks. They might have touched a kid or something at some point, but they don't ever do it again because it doesn't give them. They don't get anything out of it. These people, they get deeper dark web access and shit. In ways, this is built on a smart, and that a lot of times these people, they get convinced by this world into doing the touch or something on the dark webs, and they don't get nothing out of it. So most of them don't ever do it ever again. Ever. Because it's just a trick for this world. This is where I know this. See, being a person in high school of counterculture, I know what this faction is supposed to do. And that essentially theirs is based on the least hacks in life. And that technically at 14, I got on a Merc and used one of my brother's downloaded Merc hacks that boot people out of a Merc. And I used it once or twice. And that's it. So that has me like up here. These dudes, if they were around in the 90s, they would probably know exactly what I'm talking about with a Merc hack that boots people out of the chat. And so they would have used it every day just to piss dumb pedophiles off and stuff. And so that's kind of what it is. These people, it's like where Mopey's sitting in like this spot, trying to be a steezy hat dude. You're not doing it right. He's not doing it right. See, that is like this. This is like skateboarder. And this is like dumb D&D, like safety clips on your Janko pants with Doc Martens. Counterculture. And see, Mopey does pedophile. And that these dudes are usually like on Social Security. And that then, like I say, they wear like Velcro shoes and like this. They wear like 80s mom jeans. And then like a polo shirt. And they always stink. And they're always hideous looking. And they always have like this long kind of hair. Samson hair. They won't cut their hair. Has to be like a mullet. It has to do with their Jew obsession stuff. And so, I mean, that's, you see how it targets people in ways that go bald later in life. And that you see how it like switches to long hair here and short hair on top. And you see how it's longer hair here and shorter hair on the sides. I mean, that is like what dark web pedophile society has kind of been since the 90s. And then these people, they have been on the dark web since the 90s also. These dudes, they essentially, they switchy bitch. Off the tech man or something like that. I mean, that's kind of what it is. God hacking. Hacking, kind of. That's kind of what it is in this world. These dudes, they do the hacking. And that when they get popped, then they usually have to reform up. And so that's, I mean, that is where that structure is maintained somewhat of like a policing control internally over hacking world for a few decades. But nowadays with the see this stuff used to just be in America, and that the access to these hacking contract type of systems, see that stuff, what used to be like buying a group of mercenaries now is the same database that they do the hacking contracts in. And so the same expectation to be doing those hacking contracts is the same expectation that it takes to get into that mercenary system. And so that's ultimate sick fucking. And so that is where that stuff wasn't necessarily available for decades here in the United States. Those were Russian and Nazi and terrorist like mercenary systems. And nowadays those are hacking contract systems that still have mercenary aspects, but that is where the contracts themselves exist in a system that requires an extreme blackmailing. So this is like what's changed the dynamic of the United States hacking world. And so with that, what you get is you get these little mopies that have done all the extreme hacking and are in these hacking mercenary contracts that are trying to double off of this. And then essentially there's like an emerging like American version that's being floated around that essentially will probably double off of this. Basically. And so that is where the dynamics of the dark web operate in this way. And so to better understand, a lot of these problems that these cops have, if you get the ones that were early in like the hacking, online, finding predator kind of shit around here, this type of stuff might be familiar to them. These older, scraggly looking, weird pedophile looking guys. And so that is kind of what they always have used. This Christian aspect would have been somewhat of like a morality that would have fed into trusting them more and stuff. And then the counterculture of not doing football and baseball and shit. See, the skateboarders, they were all beautiful, but were skateboardery. Okay? Like the chicks from the 90s on, there was baseball guys, and then there was skateboarder guys. And that was the two guys that were beautiful. And that the skateboarder guys were like bad. Alright? And so, but in reality, these are dudes that fuck chicks. And that these kind of people are like, you basically, you take your cheerleaders, and that when it comes, you find the ones that maybe go to church or something, these are the guys that they wouldn't want to be with. And then they'll want to be with unpopular I'm head of the baseball team. Or I'm a skateboarder. I'm popular. That is who those chicks would be sexually attracted to. And that these dudes, are dudes that do drugs and fuck witch. And then these dudes, they end up being half of them will fuck witch, and the other half will be trying to fuck some middle school girl or something. And I mean, it's a generality, but it'll probably play out in those ways like that. And then there'll be a few that there'll be lesser people that'll be pedophiles in the skateboarder guy world. Because they fuck witch. And yeah, these dudes, yeah, they'll have hidden D&D pedophiles also, but most of them just want to fuck the hot high school cheerleader chick, even though they look like this and are doing it all wrong. And so, not much is going to be different even to this very day. And so, this type of stuff is like where these law enforcement groups, they're really getting manipulated by assumption. These people that are pedophiles, they're naturally able to convince children to be having sex. They're naturally prone to lying and manipulating and stuff. If you bring up drugs, sure, oh yeah, they'll lie and manipulate about drugs. They will. But most of the time, these dudes, these type of people, they don't have to worry about blackmails. It's like the worst thing that'll happen is maybe they would have been at a party, and they would have had some chick, and they would have gone into some room, and some asshole had a camera in, and they'll just be busy fucking a chick. That's the kind of stuff that they'll have. And then these dudes would be like, yeah, look, fucking witch. That's basically. And so that is like where these people will probably have uploaded pedophilia, and that causes them to lie and manipulate. See, these guys might have like snorting mountains of cocaine. They might lie and manipulate about that. But in the end, without the analysis of what they're snorting up, then there's no charge that can be brought without the possession and chemical analysis. So this is like in the dark web. This is like where people they attempt to use those as blackmails. That stuff doesn't actually work because there's no real way to arrest them. There's no official crime. They could have just been snorting up flour without the chemical analysis. That's where they don't ever really worry. Could be a Smartie that's like, you can kind of like sand a Smartie to look like a pill or something. And see, this is what I'm getting at, is like in a court of law, they actually need that chemical analysis to prove that stuff. So when they have these blackmails of that type of stuff, that stuff doesn't actually mean anything. And so then they're not living in a paranoia world. These people live in a paranoia world. All it takes is their face, facial recognition, a face of the child, facial recognition, and then speaking to the child, basically, and that those people can be thrown into jail. That is why that becomes a blackmail. Because all the evidence is in the facial recognition of the picture or video. And so, this is the type of stuff that, when it comes to lying and manipulating, these people are pedophiles. That's what they do to children all day long. And so they should think about that, because it changes you know, law world's kind of a. I mean, look at the Ducker guy. He would have been, if he was hacking in high school, he would have been like the exact person that like the law enforcement or the officer on campus would have wanted as like an online hacker narc and shit. And you see what type of person that guy is. So that's what I'm saying. If they want to do a tech startup, that's right. You got to put on your we crash face or your or your business face. Now these dudes usually actually know stuff about doing computers and shit. And so yeah, you got you got to you got to ditch the cuckolding beard. You got to shine up. You got to look like a Russian. You got to look like a Russian tech Ukrainian startup person. Basically. And so a lot of these dudes have a real potential bright future, but they got to keep in mind the business face. You know, you can change out the stupid D&D shirt for a V-neck and a tight gay leather coat with skinny jeans and some Doc Martens. And then shave the face, get it shined up. And that, yeah, look like the fashion people. And then build a business plan. You know, image means things. So if they're looking to do that, then nobody cares about what music they listen to. But if you're tech optimizing, doing Katy Perry, oh yeah, whatever that dude at We Crash was doing, that dude, or we were listening to Katy Perry, broadcasting it, walking, all that stuff. See, that dude probably would have been more like this in high school and shit. Maybe not a hacker, but would have been more like this. More counterculture, excluded in ways from the sports world kind of stuff. So, I mean, think about that, because that's kind of like the story. You see how he has like a story. Okay, that's part of it. The tech world has failed. All tech boom is this. Boom and bust. Boom and bust. Boom and bust. Boom and bust. This is the kind of stuff that they may not realize. Like, even look at Steve Jobs. Hippie counterculture, then shined up with his turtleneck and his short cropped hair. Basically, and you know, in the past, like even like Bill Gates, he was like nerdy. You know how all these dudes have friends that were like nerdy in technology class and shit like that. And so, and that, yeah, they always would have been like wanting to fuck the hot chick their own age kind of shit. Those people. See, if they're not that, then they're that. And so once you get your tech group to be fuck witch or fuck dude, then, see, you can optimize with fuck dude. If you find yourself with a D&D pedo, boot that person out and replace with tech gay or D&D gay or something like that, and then shine up. That's the real path for that shit. The whole idea is that these tech companies have a lot of things that they need people to do. If you start to figure out what would be like something that they probably already have figured out internally in their company, you might get startup cash for doing something that they need. It's like the WeWork. In ways, that's like where like that dude is catering to tech startups by creating the image that is like kind of expected in the tech startup world as a rental space for offices. And I see that's smart. See, that's where essentially part of the hype is Mark Zuckerberg and his stupid Facebook kind of set the standard for like how to bring in innovation, employees of innovation, and you gotta have Party Tech Co. Nowadays, the people that do innovations want to be at a Party Tech Co. And see that dude that made that WeWork, he saw that. He really did. And see those people that rent those spaces, while he might have some internal issues with people, the reality is that being able to be around other people doing tech startups, then you get help for free. And that it has a potential for building some serious innovation. And so, see, that shit was smart. Smart as fuck. Really was. And that's like where sooner or later there could be like a subcontract because when Apple's building gets full, potentially they can they can rent say they have some app that they want to add to their iPad or something. They might be able to rent out a WeWork space for 5 years. And then it's the innovative culture that all the younger people want to be a part of. And see, making their employees happy is part of this shit. So keep that in mind, because these people, they like to they like to take control of all tech startup, and then it always turns into an app that exploits people, and then it always fucks up, and it's always shitty at the end and shit. And that these tech companies really are getting sick of this shit. And so keep in mind that if you chose to fuck witch or fuck dude in high school, and if you were part of counterculture, and if you got labeled by your neurotic normal counselor and teachers and stuff in high school as being Columbine potential people, then you're probably the people. Those people are pedo accepting people. Basically, the neurotic normal people that are all conservative in a public union run. See, if you get like a teacher that's like hardcore union rep or something, those chicks, they won't like people going after the little D&D nerds and shit like that. They won't like people labeling them as Columbine and shit. They'll have a little more liberal counterculture aspect to them. They would have probably been counterculture in high school also. So, keep that in mind, because you can tell a lot about people just by the way they react to the death metal ostracized guys that like to wear the eye makeup and shit.